Now, well, last time you were here, we talked a little bit about new companies that are starting, people who are starting their own small business, and they're not quite sure what entity to label their business. Is it a
Right.
corporation? Is it an LLC? Is it sole ownership? What should I do? And so is that something that you help people figure out also? Like maybe not at this quite now time of year because you're so busy with taxes, but do you help people sort that out
Yes,
and kind of?
actually, I do. And you're absolutely right. A lot of times people have the idea of what they want to provide. But see, business is very, very nebulous. It's kind of like a big cloud. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of functions going on, between the person who came up with the idea and the person actually making sure that the people around them that are going to help them build it understand the vision.
Right.
There's a lot of, nebulous qualities going on that aren't very, very, cookie cut and formed. So when they come to me and they say, well, I want to start an LLC, I say, okay, well, why? Well, because my friend started an LLC. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's best for you.
Right.
Some people want to set up certain things because they sound good or they sound sophisticated and things like that. But they really don't take into consideration the responsibilities behind setting things like that up.
Right.
You see? So I sit down and I tell them, I can certainly give you what you ask for, but what you ask for versus what you need
Maybe
and what
two
you
different
want
things.
versus what you need can be totally different things.
Right.
And there have been a few occasions when, people tell me what they want and what their current wants are. I say, okay, well, what are your long-term goals? And they say, well, I want to be able to do this and have that and, sell stock to, and then I say, stop. When you say those words, sell stock to, there is no stock to sell if you are an LLC. There is no stock to sell if you are a partnership.
Right.
There is no stock to sell if you're a sole proprietor. The only way you can sell stock to anyone is if you have stock.
Right.
And the only companies that recognize stock are, in fact, corporations.
Right.
You see, which means that you asking me to set up an LLC for you
It's incorrect.
is not necessarily what you want to do, at least not
Right.
long term.
Yes.
You can set up an LLC and then dissolve it and then turn around and set up a new business, doing the same things if you want, but that's, quite redundant and can be, costly as well.
Yeah, because that's another thing that you brought up, because you can't roll one into another. You actually have to retire one and then start another one.
Yeah, it's cleaner.
Okay.
It's cleaner. When you look up and have something that's not quite closed or, someone else looks at it 4 years down the road and things and say, okay, well, I think this is what the guy did. Is this right? And, people get fired and new people get hired and records get lost and things like that. It's usually just a cleaner idea, at least to me,
Right.
to be able to say, you know what, we did this under this name from this date to this date.
Right.
And at this point in time, we dissolved this organization. We paid the corporate debt. We took the money and gave it to, whoever the
Whoever
owners
the
were,
owners
whatever
were.
we wanted to do. And then we set up a whole new organization,
Okay.
with
Makes it
new
cleaner.
dates, with new articles, with whatever the situation is. I think it just makes things cleaner.
Right. So that answered my next question. What is the value in hiring an accountant? You just answered that.
Only if the answers are correct.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Right.
Please
Yeah.
don't let the, telephone boards and things start lighting up with other accountants going, nothing he said makes any sense. He's a fraud.
No, we wouldn't have you here if that were the case.
Thank you.
Right. So, with that being said, a lot of times people wonder at what point they should hire an accountant, and at what point, I think right at the beginning, Nathan and I both had that conversation when he started his business, and it was a huge value to, sit down with a professional on the other side of the table and, tell the person, what your, like you said, what your 3-year, 2-year, 5-year plan is, 10-year goals are maybe, and then have them walk you through what you should do so that you can plan it out correctly and not put yourself in a situation because you didn't know. Not knowing is not an excuse for the IRS.
You're absolutely right.
They don't care that you didn't know. It's like, so what? Now you do know. It's expensive, but now you know. So,
yeah.
So you want to sit down and have that conversation right at the beginning with a professional. Now, is that a conversation that's expensive? Do they have to set a budget aside so they can come over and have a conversation with you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, many of my contemporaries have a free first-time consultation where they'll
Right.
sit down with you for an hour or two and just kind of find out what you want, pick your brain and, help you navigate those, somewhat daunting waters. I do the same thing. Someone calls me and says, I'm kind of having an idea. I want to think about setting up a small business. I'll certainly sit down with them at a Starbucks for an hour or two and, just kind of drink a latte and, let them tell me what they want to do, what their vision is, what their plan is. And I can certainly let them know, even if they don't use me, that it's a good idea to find someone to, help them go further and, figure out where the landmines are all buried.
Right. And then, how does a person know if they need a bookkeeper or not? How do they figure that one out? Because, of course, people aren't in these days so much bringing pieces of paper in a box to you anymore, I'm sure. Well, maybe not. Maybe they are still bringing things that way. I don't know. But
Sometimes the paper looks like confetti. Different people have just different strengths, and some people aren't very organized and diligent with their record keeping.
Right.
And it reflects in their invoice when they get it from me. But I get all types of different people to come with me with different degrees of organization and things like that.
So, okay, so when you hire a bookkeeper, what are you getting? What are you getting?
The first thing that I think that you're getting is a lot of time and peace of mind, because the bookkeeper is going to record the transactions and analyze an organization in a manner that maybe the owner of the organization doesn't have the skill set to do.
Right.
And I'll tell you kind of the analogy that I give a lot of my clients or people that I speak to who really don't know if they need one or not. And, I don't know if you guys are basketball fans or sports fans or not, but at the end of basketball games or, especially during playoffs, you'll see all the basketball stars after the game sit at the desk and answer questions from the media.
Right.
But in front of them, they have the stats. And some of them, pick the paper up and you can see them reading what their rebounds were or how many free throws they hit and things like that.
Right.
And they can take that information and they can say, well, we were successful because we had a bunch of great offensive rebounds, or we weren't successful because we turned the ball over too many times, or we're jacking up too many we're jacking up too many 3-pointers, and that's not going to be how we're going to be able to be successful.
Right.
And those statistics are the types of things that accountants and bookkeepers are going to put together for you and give you the information every month.
Right.
So that you can look at it and go, okay, well, wow, there's a reason why I'm broke.
Yes.
Because we're spending too much money in the champagne room, like we were last time we were together.
Right.
Or there are certain things going on that, from an operations standpoint, we don't see.
Okay.
From a accounting standpoint, because there are also costs going on that don't necessarily require a distribution of cash, like depreciation. You see, there are certain things that are going on where you're, recognizing expense without actual monies being transferred, like I said.
Right.
As a result, you get a much more complete and a much more, I guess, fundamental opportunity to look at your company's statistics. And then you can move forward with a much more strategic plan.
Okay. So that answered my second question. Do you need a bookkeeper? The answer is yes. In most cases.
In a lot of cases. And I know
especially
for me,
if it has moving parts.
Well, I tell everyone, if you're not going to do it yourself, and if you're not going to be diligent in sitting at, the desk and banging that stuff out and putting it in the system and looking at it and giving your business the opportunity to understand what these things mean,
Right.
then you need to find someone to do it. I tell people all the time that there's some accounting software that I like, and there's a lot of software that I don't like.
Right.
Because now software is being designed for anybody to be able to use it.
Right.
And you see, just because you know how to enter a check or create an invoice doesn't necessarily mean that you can run the reports at the end of the month and look at the information and analyze it and understand what these numbers really mean.
Right.
You can put yourself in a situation where you put a bunch of stuff in and get some report and you go, okay, well,
looks right.
is this good?
Right. Does it make sense?
Does this make sense?
Right.
And if someone asks me, what is this? How did it get here? Can I explain that?
Right.
You see? And that's when people find themselves in trouble.
Exactly.
They do it and they say, well, I think I did the right thing, and it looks like it because there's a whole bunch of zeros on there. But, is it really right? Is what you have correct? Is it good? And if it's wrong, do you know what needs to be done to correct the problem?
Right.
You see? And that's where you run into a problem if you're not hiring a specialist or someone, even periodically, who can look at your stuff and just make sure that you're staying in your lane.
Okay.
I have a couple of clients that I only see maybe once every 3 months. And I just kind of go in, look what they did, what they have, and just kind of eyeball it and make sure that it's within reason of what they're doing.
Okay.
If they start to deviate and get too far,
off to the left or
off
to
to
the
the
right.
left, to the right,
Yeah.
I can kind of pull them back into focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And, well, I was going to say, too, I'm sure it also depends on how complex the business is and
Right.
just all the details, because I know I see my accountant once a year, and my bookkeeping isn't that difficult for me anyways.
Right.
So I've just done it.
Right.
And what I was going to say earlier is that what bookkeeping does for me is it does take the emotion out of the business.
Yes.
Which is a good thing, because there's months where I feel like I did horrible where I didn't, and vice versa, where I feel like I did great and I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't do that
Right.
great.
Right.
And bookkeeping keeps you on that mindset of like, okay, this is how I really did.
That's very true.
Mhm.
I have a couple other clients
Right.
who feel dejected at the end of the month and really didn't, have the emotional satisfaction that they hoped that they would have as far as their performance and how well the company did. But then because I'm not emotionally tied to their business,
Right.
I can crunch the numbers a little bit and say, well, wait a minute. You made $3,500. Small business, of course, but that's not bad. Well, where's the money? Well, why don't I have any of it? Well, you took the money and you drank it. you drank the money.
Right.
And it's yours to have. You can certainly do that.
what you want with it, but know that you drank it.
But you drank your money.
Right.
And now you're hungover, and that's why you feel bad.
And that's why you're
Exactly.
hungover, and that's why you feel bad. You see, and if you're not going to eliminate that emotional tie to the business and look at it for what it is, then you're going to make a big mistake, and maybe think that what you're doing is wrong when it isn't,
Right.
or you're going to continue to tweak and alter what you think you should be doing when what you were doing was fine. And you're actually now throwing it more out of whack
Right.
than what it actually was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We got more information in this few minutes than I even imagined. That's why it's good to talk to an accountant. So thank you for coming in and meeting with us and sharing this information, because it will be on YouTube. And we'll be able to go back and digest it even further. And that's what I love about YouTube, is that the person can go back and listen again to the parts that apply to them and learn something from the parts that they may want to have applied to them at some point. So as in having a small business and taking that to a corporation or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So with that being said, if someone wanted to get in contact with you, how do they get in contact with you? I know it's Keyser Financial Services. And so what is the contact information for you over there?
My phone number is 213-293-9309. I can't afford a receptionist, so you will get me if you call.
It's not cost effective at this point in your company.
At this point in time, no.
There you go.
And my website is www.keyseraccounting.com.